to have a look at doing a gradient mask. So we've brought our image in and we've scaled it up and adjusted it a little bit, but maybe we decide we need a little bit more text down here, for example. Or maybe we want to use a gradient mask to paint through to something below. So I'm going to just place another one of Lena's images in there on a different layer and scale it up and everything. It may not quite fit, but I might use that, and I might play around with her background again. So if you want to see if they're actually aligning in your layers palette, this is if you want to combine two versions of the image, just bring the opacity down of your top layer, and then you can probably play around and do a pretty good job of lining it up with the layer underneath. It might not be perfect, you might have to fiddle a bit, but you can probably get pretty close. So let's say I'm happy with that. I hit return or tick, the little tick to place it. And then remember, it's now behaving still like a smart object, so I'm not able to actually paint or do very much. You see I get that little slash across my brush. I can't actually paint or do anything to it. So I've got to remember that I need to turn it into pixels. So go to your layer menu, rasterize, smart object. You'll see now it's lost that link. It's no longer a smart object. It's just a bunch of pixels, which means you're able to then start, editing it out. And we were doing that last week. We've got a number of different tools you could use to get rid of areas. I'm on the top layer now, and I'm just very quickly removing some stuff I don't want. So a bit much there. So sometimes if the edge isn't good, I'll put it back up to 100 so you can see it. I might even want to go to image adjust levels and just see how it's missing those darker values. That always happens on scans, so you often need to come in and just get a little bit more contrast. You can see how it's kind of flat, the colours. You're going to find that on most scans. So you can either do it as an adjustment layer, which is temporary, or if you're pretty confident about something like this, it's like a permanent edit, and we just apply it. So I'm happy with that. So maybe a different selection tool would have been good to use there. Doesn't seem to have it there, but anyway. So whatever you do to kind of select bits, get rid of things you don't want. You have this magic selection brush tool. And remember, that works, that's a very, very good one. It works by painting. So you paint the bit that you want to select and get rid of, or you want to change a colour in that area. And then it turns into a selection and you just, delete. So that could be very useful if you were trying to just select an area of the image. You could use any of those selection tools. You could use the Magic Wand tool if you thought there was a clear colour difference. So I could probably get the eye just by holding down the shift selection. But if it was very messy, well, it's a much easier way to use this, it's up on this one, selection brush tool. It's a brilliant tool they put in. And then, you can be very specific about, and reduce the size of your brush. Use the bracket keys on the keyboard, the square bracket ones, to increase, decrease, so you can be a bit more fluid with your editing. So a small brush, when I'm really zoomed up, is going to let me do a really fine paint in there. So I've just got the eye, click back off it, turns into a selection, and now I can do whatever I like in there. So I could, dump a different colour on top. If you're dumping different colours, put them on a new layer so you can get rid of it. So you could do something like that, and you could put that top layer even into opacity, or you could do what we were talking about last week, which is using these overlay. So you can see different ones will do different things. So that could be something, and again you can use any of these, I'll go back, you can use any of these adjustment tools. So again you could use hue saturation, for example. So I'm on the wrong layer, see? I've got to be on the layer where my pixels are, I forgot. So if you get that message, you couldn't do it because no pixels selected, it just means you're sitting on the wrong layer. The pixels are here. So I could use any of those. So I could use my hue saturation slider and say, okay, I want more purpley or reddish coloured eyes or whatever. And I could play with the saturation to pop the colour up. So I'm increasing the saturation. So now this figure has got purple eyes instead of brown eyes. So you can do a lot of adjustments on it. And in the wrapping paper project, we also explored the replace colour tool. So that's under the paintbrush tool. So I'm just reminding you it's there, colour replacement. So that can also be something you could do. So I want to reload that selection now because I want to do something else to it. So I go onto that layer and just hold down the Command key and just click once. So I'm just holding down the Command key. That's the one next to your spacebar key. You can do this with any layer and it just loads the selection. It does the same as going to select and load selection down here. See that? Mm-hmm. That's what you're doing. It's just a shortcut. Good to learn, makes you kind of more fluid with your artistry basically. That's a quick thing. Hold down the Command key, the one next to the spacebar key, and just click once. Oh, I'm on the wrong layer, no pixels selected. I've got to remember, my pixels are here. But my layer's there, so won't let me. It should. Oh, maybe I didn't paint anything there. I thought I did. Oh, I didn't paint on it there, so I probably have to remake it. So if I was smart, I would have painted that colour on the top layer, but I forgot. So I was, to avoid doing that, try and paint a different colour on a top layer, then you will be able to select it. I'll just demonstrate that with the other layer, that selection technique. So say I just want to select this sky. If I just hold down that Control key and click, you can see it's just selecting that. It's just I didn't actually paint into that area, I forgot. Let me do it again. So looking at the eye now, if I wanted to reselect that, I go, okay, I could paint it, or I could think about using the Magic Wand tool, because there's a clear colour difference. Hold down the Shift key till you get it all, or increase the tolerance. Either will get you the same shades of one colour. So if I increase the tolerance on that, so 25, and keep holding down the Shift key to add, with any of these tools, to add to the selection. So now I've got a selection. It's not great, my first selection was better. If I go onto that top layer and dump a different colour in there, now that should be on this top layer. So it's on that layer. Yep. So just think about putting, different colours, different things you're doing, using your layers. So if you want to put a solid colour, you can use a selection from another layer, but move layers and then it'll end up there. So you've got it to play with on a separate layer. So you don't have to worry if you now deselect it, because at any point you can just reload that selection by holding down the Command key. So what I was going to do though, what I was trying to show you, was to remember about that colour replacement tool. whatever colour is your foreground colour is the colour it will replace. I don't know why I want to give her red eyes, but let's say I do. Notice I can't, that layer's not visible, so I can't paint on that. It's this layer. If I want to paint on that layer, I'll change the colour on that layer. I don't want to use that layer, I just want to paint on here. It's changing the colour. And the reason you might use that, and I'll show you with a bigger selection, that selection brush tool, which is brilliant. Let's just get let's just say I just want to change the colour just on this side of her face. It's a bit too similar to the arm colour. Okay, so I'm painting a selection, and of course this works much better if you're using a Wacom tablet. You know, you can really paint much more intuitively rather than using the mouse, so you can get very delicate selections. Click off it, you've got your selection, and it's sitting, the pixels, I'm going to alter the pixels on this layer, and I'm going to just use the change, the colour replacement tool. I've got red as my foreground colour, so this is exactly what we did with the wrapping paper. And what's nice always about that tool is it keeps all the tonality, right? So that's very different to if I go to the top layer, same selection, right? So selections can be used on any layer you like, right? The selections can travel across the layers. So if I move to this layer, and now say, okay, I want to dump that colour in on top with the paint bucket tool. Okay, so that, and then I could put that on multiply or something and see how it went. So I could get a similar effect. So either's fine, but just be aware that you've got the power to really kind of alter the way the image works. So layer modes, we looked at them last week. They're great to experiment with, to make really quite different, you know, designs. I mean, look at that. I mean, that's like I've got a red outline on the eye. Didn't expect that, but I like it. Exclusion is doing an even better job of that. Couldn't predict how that would look. Saturation, it's just saturating the red over the top. So it gets a very similar effect. But if you simply want to keep your illustration with all its tonal values but change the colours a little bit, then fine, you know, use the colour replacement tool. Okay, so that's that bit. So I'll turn that off because that's a little bit confusing. So I've used the colour replacement tool. You can see it's done a great job of keeping all that lovely pencil texture. Nothing's changed there. So what I want to do now is this is the last thing I'll demo, then I'll get you all working on it. You know, for example, I mean, I would probably take the lips here and put some red into them. So I'd select them separately. And the perfect tool for that is that paint selection tool, selection brush tool. So use it, it's a great tool. If it's frustrating you trying to use the mouse with it, go and get a Wacom, plug it in, and you'll be able to paint that selection really, really delicately. So think about improving your image, changing the colours, but then what if we actually want to overlay this on top or paint through to the black one underneath? To do that, you want to use a gradient mask. So a gradient mask is just this, at the bottom of the layers palette, you'll see this little icon. You need to put it on the layer you want to use. And you need to check over here in your toolbar that you have switched them around so that black is on top. The easiest way to think about this is that black is 100% chopping through the layer. So it's like you've got a piece of paper one on top of the other, and you're simply punching a hole through it, so of course you'll see what's underneath. So, but you must be painting on this, not on this. If you paint on this, you'll actually paint colour, and check that it's black forward. Then when you come over here, it's at 100% and it's got a really hard brush. I'd probably want to use a soft brush for this. And you can do it transparent. I'll do it 100% just so you can see. And then you start Sorry, that's not working. I'm on the wrong tool there. You actually have to paint with a normal paintbrush. So when you're painting on a layer mask, get the normal paintbrush tool. Make sure the little white highlight is on the mask that you've made. And then you can see I'm painting through and I'm bringing through the layer underneath. So you might find it hard, if you haven't lined them up, this might look a bit ick. So you have to spend a bit of time if you really want this to work, lining the two layers up. But maybe I just like the texture in the hair better on the black and white one, and I want to bring that through. So as I paint, I'm getting 100% of that bottom layer through. You can see the eyes don't quite match up, so I'd have to spend more time matching them up. But where you might like to do it is something like the background. So I'll just get one of Lena's. Lena's got a background, don't you?
Yeah.
Is that just a plain background?
Yeah, it just has watercolour.
Yeah, so something like that. You might want to try that. I've got to get off the mask though. So I want to place embedded again, and we'll go and get her background watercolour, that one.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have an image, so it's a perfect background texture to work with. And you can paint through this once we've rasterised it. So remember, you've got to go layer, you've got to hit the return key, so place it when you've got it to the size, or click the little tick. And then layer, rasterize, and it becomes just pixels. Now I could put it, I could paint on top of it, or I could put it underneath. Let's have a go underneath. So you put it underneath the one you want to paint through, say this one. So you can see it's showing directly through. So if I want to use a mask to paint through, then I'm painting through here, and I can see that background layer. So yeah, and again, this is where maybe making a selection on here before you begin, so you control where it goes. I might use a polygon tool to get a straight line there. So now when I'm controlling where I paint now. Remember, selections can be used anywhere, on any layer or any mask. So now when I go and use the paintbrush tool, I'm not painting colour, I'm painting through the mask. And you can see it, because I made a selection, I'm controlling the edge better. So at any point now, I can have a look at that, and I can go and muck around with my background. And I'm just changing the colour, notice, because I had a selection active, so it's only doing it to selection. So making selections to control what you're doing. If I want it to the whole thing, take away the selection and it would now do it to the whole layer. So I'm just darkening the background. So one of the other really important things that you want to do with a layer mask is to mask an area with a solid colour so you can put text on it. That's really common. So you have a very busy photo, you want to put text on it, and the theatre poster is a very typical example of this. Maybe Lena needs to put her heading at the top and have the image kind of fade away. Well, how does she achieve that? So one of the ways is what's called a gradient mask. So I'm just going to turn off all the details so you can see what this is doing. So again, it's a mask. You just click on that little thing. Make sure that black is forward here, because black means 100% chop through. And then instead of using a paint bucket, we're going to use a gradient tool. We come down here and we drag across and we get a gradient mask. You see there? So if I turn that layer back on, it's starting to let through what I want. Now, in the case of a complex image, and you can adjust it, you can see you can go in and fiddle around with it and really adjust how it behaves. You can do all sorts of fun things. There's all the different kinds of gradients. Yeah, so you've got a lot of control there. A typical one would be the sort of standard one, that first one, and it's just doing that. It's just fading something out. Now, if I wanted to get a solid area so I could have text, then I would need to make a nice clear layer and put an actual, not a gradient, just put some solid colour in with the paint bucket tool. Let's say I want to fade to black. So I've got my black, I need to put it under, and now you can see that that gradient there is controlling a fader, and on a busy image I'd be able to go and put that on there. So the gradient tool, you can go back to the gradient tool to edit it after you've made it. So you can make it quite subtle. So when we go and turn on Lena's image, you can see it's only applied to the image underneath. So I would need to do it over here on this one. And you can do more than one, but the trouble is you have to apply the gradient mask. You make it permanent. So let's say I want that, what I've done there, I just go to make it permanent, it clips the image. It's layer mask, apply. And you can see it disappears. So I've actually clipped that image, so that mask is actually permanent now. So if I turn everything off, you can see that's gone now. It was just a mask before, now it's permanent. So for this layer, if I want a gradient, because I want to put my title there, make a gradient mask, get the gradient tool, make sure that you have something below that you're masking to, and then use that gradient tool to drag across, and you can have it as solid or as, you know, you can really, the longer you do it, the more you drag, the more sort of area it covers and the more subtle. If you want it on a shorter area, then you need to, you know, fiddle with this. But you can see we could really, and then we could put some text over there. You can put the heading over there. So it's a good way to deal with putting it, instead of having a solid panel. It depends what you want. There's nothing wrong with putting a solid panel over it. But if you're going to do that, then you may as well just do that in InDesign and add a solid square panel. You can't do this more subtle masking in InDesign. So if you want something like this, you've actually got to do it while you're working with the image in Photoshop, and then that becomes the illustration. We've got that area there, and then, you know, we'll save it. Let's say gradient mask, example. I'll save it on documents in my demo. And at this point, when I'm transferring it over to InDesign, I actually wouldn't apply these. So if I was really sure about the position, I would go layer, layer mask, apply, and that mask would disappear. But the beauty of this process is that you can place this into InDesign and then go back, link back to Photoshop and fiddle with it, save it, it'll update in InDesign, and you can, on the fly, edit it. And I wouldn't flatten these layers until the very end. Yeah, and even then I'd do it on, I'd make sure I had a copy of this with all my layers. So if a client comes back to me again in the future, I can still do a lot of editing in here. I'm not left with just a flattened file. However, good printing practice and good, you know, dealing with handing files over to everybody else would be to flatten those layers, just give them the image. That's more, you know, it's a smaller file to deal with. But again, it's about process. It's about keeping, you know, another folder that has, call it Photoshop Originals, and keep all your layers in there. And then have another one that's flattened Photoshop, you know. Have separate layers. Have RGB layers for digital, have CMYK for print ones. Just make different folders right at the beginning of a project. So now if we've done with that bit, we can go across to InDesign and place it in there. I don't know, I'm still recording. I don't know if InDesign's going to pop up. Oh, I'm a bit stuck. So I'll make another movie in a minute and show you the next step, bringing it in, and how you can work between the two. But right now, just get going on editing the actual illustration, get it to where you want in Photoshop, and the next demo I'll do would be placing it into InDesign and linking back and being able to edit live in here. Okay,